We are going to discuss completing a square. How do you complete the square? What does complete the square mean? Why do we have to complete the square? Let's get to work. Let's look at these numbers. 9. 9 is a perfect square. Why? Well, because 9 is equal to 3 squared. 16. Well, 16 is a perfect square because it is equal to 4 squared. 25 is a perfect square because it is equal to 5 squared. And 100 is also a perfect square because it's equal to 10 squared. So y'all know why these are called perfect squares. Let's look at this trinomial. X squared plus 10x plus 25. If I was to factor that, I would get x plus 5 times x plus 5, which is the same thing as x plus 5 squared. X squared plus 10x plus 25 is a perfect trinomial because when I factor it, I get x plus 5 squared. Okay, we have another trinomial. X squared minus 18x plus 81. Now when I factor this, to get x squared, you should know that I need x times x. Remember, I have a factoring video on factoring special products. 81, I will use 9 times 9 in this case. Now, I do not want a positive middle term, I want a negative. So I have x minus 9 times x minus 9, which is x minus 9 squared. So x squared minus 18x plus 81 is another perfect trinomial. The reason it's perfect is because when I factor it, I do get a binomial squared. So if I wanted a trinomial that was a perfect square trinomial, and you had an x squared and an x term, what could, in this case, c, what could I replace c with? So x squared plus 14x plus something would be a perfect square trinomial. This is what you do. You take the x coefficient, in this case it is 14. You divide it by 2, and then you take that answer and you square it. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49. So if I wrote x squared plus 14x plus 49, when I factor that, that will be x plus 7 times x plus 7, which is equal to x plus 7 squared. What if I have x squared minus 22x? What constant could I add to make this a perfect trinomial? We take the x coefficient. In this case, it is negative 22, and we divide it by 2. We take that answer and we square it. Well, negative 22 divided by 2 is negative 11. Negative 11 squared is a positive 121. Notice, it really doesn't matter if the x coefficient is positive or negative, because when we square it, the number we're adding to make this a perfect trinomial will always be positive because a negative times a negative is a positive. So if I had x squared minus 22x plus 121, and I factored that, it would be x minus 11 squared. The reason I had to put a minus this time is because my middle term was negative. So now you're wondering, why in the world do I need to complete the square? Why do I have to know how to do this? Well, remember this formula? Y is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. That is a parabola. And when it's in this form, you can easily know that the vertex is hk. But look what this form has in it. It has a binomial squared. This is a formula for a circle. And when it's in this form, you easily can see that the center is hk, the radius is r. But in order to see the center of a circle, look what the formula has. It has not just one binomial squared, it has 2 binomial squares. Okay, and the math book is not going to be sweet to you all the time and put parabolas and circles in this exact form. sometimes you have to do a little bit of work to get these binomials squared. There's another reason we need to know how to complete the square. In solving equations, we can solve equations by using the square root property. But in order to use a square root property, we have to have something squared. In this case, we have x squared equals 49. There's not an x to the first. So it's pretty simple. Y'all remember these? You would take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is just plain old x. See, the square root and the squared cancel each other out. And that would be what? You've got it. Don't forget that plus or minus 7. But I have to have something squared in order to use the square root property. Look at this equation. Oh, they were so sweet. They already have this binomial squared all by itself. It would be very simple for me to use the square root property because remember, a square and something squared cancel each other out. But if you take the square root of the left, make sure you take the square root of the right. And like I just said, the square root and the square cancel each other out. I will have only x minus 2 on the left. On the right side, don't forget your plus or minus, and that would be 9. The square root of 81 is 9. Now, if I wanted to finish this problem for you, I would add 2 to both sides, and x is going to equal 2 plus or minus 9. The plus or minus is not with the 2. The plus or minus is with the 9. So 2 plus 9 would be positive 11. 2 minus 9 would be a negative 7. Okay, but what we're really talking about is why do we need to complete the square? And it may be because I want to see the vertex of a parabola easily. It may be because I want to see the center of a circle and I need to get it in that form. Or it may be that I want to use the square root property and I have an x squared and an x. So I need to add something to both sides to make it a perfect square. Now I do have videos on solving equations by completing the square. It is under the quadratic equations tab. Good luck on completing the square.